Eddie Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the Silverstone Podcast. It's a delight as ever to talk to you. Let me start by asking you, what are your memories of Silverstone?
Well, my memories go back to my childhood days, because it was the one circuit that was easy to get to from Ireland. It was the first place I came to race. It's the first time I ever saw a Grand Prix, because I was a huge John Watson fan, but please don't tell him that. But I remember that huge accident at Silverstone with Jody Scheckter, the Adamage, and all of those guys, and Watty, of course. And I remember standing on one of the hoardings, and us Irish boys, we were a bit adventurous, and we had wire cutters, and we cut through the wire to get in for free. But please don't tell anybody in Silverstone that. But they were the memories that I had, because we were sort of a bit wild as young boys. We all piled into the back of a white van, wound up at Silverstone to the light, camping out for the weekend. And that's the memories that I had of Silverstone. And to be honest, that continued all the way through my life, because I raced there in Formula 4 and in Formula 3. And then with the team later on, the first time I ever put De Silva in a Formula 3 car was there, and he changed his name to Senna, as we know. That was 82. Damon Hill. Michael Schumacher's first ever time in a Formula 1 car was at the circuit at Silverstone before we went to Spa to do the race. So I lived there, I had a factory there. Everything about Silverstone, I feel that they embraced me as an Irish person and an Irish team, which other countries would not have done. So I have a huge love affair with Silverstone, with the town itself, with Northamptonshire. And of course, I built the factory there. And of course, Jordan Formula 1 started on the ground of Silverstone Circuit. So I couldn't have done that if I didn't feel that I had a connection with it.
I was going to ask why. Why did you put the factory there? I mean, it's the closest you could get to Silverstone without actually being in the gates.
Well, there was all sorts of reasons. I remember going there as a driver in Formula 3 and based next door to Gordon Spice. And that was in the very early days when they were all old airline hangars from the bomber days. And they were freezing cold. I'll never forget. I've never been so cold in my entire life. There was no inside loo. We used to have to go next door to the Gordon Spice's place to go to the loo. I mean, it was really very basic. But that's where Formula 3 started from. That's where my little Formula, the team, I ran David Hunt, James's baby brother, in Formula 4 there. And it just grew and grew and grew. And then, of course, I bought some land because I wanted to build the Formula 3000 team. And that became the Formula 1 team. And I built the factory next door to it. It was a natural thing to do. I couldn't think of any other place that I would want to go to, because it gave me the suppliers, it gave me the engineers. People were happy to come to be based at Silverstone, because most people believed that was the central point of motor racing in the globe, worldwide, but certainly in British motor racing for me was always Silverstone.
And what is it like to be the boss of a team at the British Grand Prix weekend?
It has many very different things. One, it's exciting, of course, because it's local, but it is a complete pain because every cousin, aunt, uncle, relation, friend, contact, in Ireland, they all think that you've got about 1 million tickets that you need to give away to. So you have suddenly a huge new group of friends that you've never heard of, never saw, and never will see again if you provide them. So it's a lot of harassment, but that's a given because of the nature of what it is. This is the first Irish Formula 1 team ever, and even to today. And as a result of that, naturally, there's a lot of people who want to have contact, and it was genuine journalists who wanted to make the story up about how can you come from being a banker in Ireland to running a Formula 1 team. And, some people felt that there was a story in that, and they wanted to sell copy to their newspapers, and then who knows, you're the journalist here. And, each story has a different content. And of course, each one, every journalist wanted a one-to-one. And very soon after that, with my own press people, they said, look, we can't do that. We need to make it bigger. And that's why we had, at the Grand Prix, we used to have a Friday morning for all of the journalists, and we would have kind of a global press conference, but people would take different pieces from it, so as it wasn't replicated and it wasn't just the same story. And I felt that was much fairer and much greater. It's also better for the team because it gave her a much wider network for which to work from.
How important do you think Silverstone is to the economy of the UK and to motor racing fans, I suppose?
We often forget and think, because people think of just as a one-day event. In other words, for example, Ascot, how important is that to the horse racing? But that's where we are. You know, how important is Monaco to the whole scheme of the structure of Monaco, how it is? And quite honestly, there was a recent program, and I heard Prince Albert speak that it is one of the most vital things that he has in terms of the VAT content, the income, the running of this country. Now translate that and put it into a Silverstone position. First of all, it's, in my opinion, the home of motor racing, not just in Britain, but worldwide. That's how proudly I feel about it. I'm a member of the BRDC, which is the British Racing Drivers Club, which was kind of unique for an Irish person. I shouldn't really be in there, but I am, and I'm proud of that. The thing about Silverstone, it offers the government numbers of people. Remember what I think is really, really strange. You know, you have a company like Mercedes, which is sweeping the floor with everyone for the last 5 years. Where are they based? 3 miles up the road in Bagley. And then you have Williams was always there, Jordan was there, Benetton was there. Every team, with the exception of McLaren, effectively, which was down the road in Woking. Even the great Ferrari came here with John Barnard, and they used all the technical areas. They made the cars there. So Britain is not just the home of motorsport, but it's the hub of motorsport globally. And I think most teams are either based there or have contacts there and use the facilities that are there. Because remember, when you're looking for other services that supply that industry, you look for a hub that gives you the best quality people that can deliver what you're trying to achieve. And that's what Silverstone does.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the British Grand Prix after show party. Now, this was something that you started, wasn't it?
That was in the times when Silverstone had lovely green pastures and didn't have, if you like, the new modern era of all these garages. This was when the old garages were there and behind the garages. And the traffic was so insane that we decided we might as well stay here rather than be on the road for the next 3-4 hours just queuing to go down the road maybe in a couple of miles. I put together a rock and roll band and all sorts of people, and still the great memories of Damon playing when he won the Grand Prix. And it was always a tradition. Whoever won the Grand Prix had to come on stage with us and do something and play something and sing something, even how bad they were. But we would always make sure we would cocoon them into a little bubble where they didn't look too bad. And that's obviously not taking me into consideration because I was a drummer of not great talent, but totally enthusiastic about it. But I had a contact with a number of the people. One year it would be, Chris de Berg. The next year it would be with Chris Ria or somebody like that. And we would gather groups of people from all individual bands who would play for free on condition that we would get one of the teams to supply the beers and another team to supply something else and a bit of food. And it was such a real family fun occasion. And I'm glad you brought it up because I'd semi-forgotten about it. It's not the same, of course, now because, Silverstone needed to do something for the fans, which I agree. This particular thing that you're talking about, the first rock and roll Christmas or Silverstone party was always in the paddock. And the paddock by nature is kind of exclusive, isn't it? It doesn't allow, it's very controlled as to how the people can get in there. Whereas Silverstone now, in their wisdom, I believe, they put up and erect a proper stage and a stage controlled, managed just like any other festival or rock concert, brilliantly done. But it's more difficult for us to do the jamming and the carry-on that we used to do between so-called mates who just won a Grand Prix. But, I now know they've rolled that out into MotoGP as well. So I think it works for them, and it works. The fans absolutely adore the after party, and I think what Silverstone gives to the public is better than genuinely any other circuit that I know of.
One of the most memorable jamming sessions you had, I think, was you, Damon Hill, and Johnny Herbert all at the same time.
Well, do remember both of them won the British Grand Prix, and of course both had driven for me. Damon after that in Formula One, but you know, Damon's first ever drive in a Formula 3 car was in a Jordan car in Donington in 1985. Prior to that time, what people may not realize, he was a motorbike racer, because he kind of rebelled from what his great father, the great world champion, that Graham did, and he wanted to be a motorcycle racer. But he eventually changed. And I remember, God be good to him, rest in peace, Alan Henry was the one who brought him to me. And he said, look, I think we need to give this guy a try. Would you do that? And I was always a little bit of a sucker for doing young kids that I thought that had real talent or potential of great talent. And Damon was one of them. And so we brought him. The only place we could get in testing at that time was Donington. And we did that when Tom Wheatcroft was alive. And so Damon was easy to get to him because I had kind of helped him to get started. And Johnny Herbert had won a Formula 3 championship with us in 1987. So there was a great connection. So to have those on stage, and if I remember the photograph that you may be alluding to, there's also a Hakkinen there, and there's also a David Coulthard there. I mean, I couldn't dare tell you, you know, but there was a great camaraderie. The great thing about sport, in many respects, is that there is a huge word called respect, and we all seem to get on reasonably well. But the competition is so wild and violent between them when it's actually competitive. But when they're friends and the helmet's off, I do believe there is a different element of fun and respect.
It's a shame, really, because we know there are quite a few musical people in the paddock nowadays. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could get Lewis up singing, Daniel Kvyat playing his guitar, someone on the drums?
Life has moved on. Jenny, I'm not talking about, you're much younger than me, but in my day, people did things like that because it was spontaneous. Now, there's a lot of controls, there's a lot of PR, but then there's a lot of hysteria that I think it would be difficult for Lewis, because he's now, you know, in the Senna-esque regime. He's so global, he's so popular about what he does and his position in that market. It would be difficult maybe. But of course, that would be my real joy, to be able to see him, particularly if he wins the championship this year, equaling the great Michael Schumacher. I think there is a reason to have a party. I would like him to be part of it, and if perhaps he's listening to this podcast, let this be the inspiration that could give him, if you like, the idea that, you know, let some of his friends come around him to give him the comfort and the freedom to be able to enjoy this moment, and for him to enjoy it, his family to enjoy it, but also to give that joy to the greater public, because we could have it streamed or fed into all sorts of different media opportunities that there is nowadays that we didn't have before. And I think Lewis deep down has that ability to want to be able to do that, but we haven't seen it yet, which is a shame.
One final thought before I let you go. What is your fondest Silverstone memory that you can share with everybody?
Wow, well, there's several of them. I think obviously it relates to a Grand Prix, and I'm trying to juggle in my mind because I'm just muttering on here in the hope that I can recall something that is different. But I remember Silverstone used to be the halfway cut in the championship, and I remember going out on a wet day in a wet race, and Damon was in a good position, but he spun off. And I suddenly realized that, you know, Ralf Schumacher was quite far behind in the race. And, you know, we were going to score no points, and this would be very disappointing, not just for us, but everybody around us, because Silverstone was for sure the home race. And we had to score a point. In those days, you had to finish in the top 6 to score points. And to our absolute amazement, Ralf Schumacher from the back of the grid drove one of the most almighty races. Now, he didn't come up to win or be on the podium or anything, but the fact that he got the Jordan car to be 6th gave us that all-important point, which meant that we qualified for the money going on to the second half of the following year. And money was a very key aspect of Jordan. We couldn't operate without either the prize money. We did have some sponsors, of course, with Jenson and Hedges and Deutsche Post. That yellow car was a symbol for those sponsors. But Ralf Schumacher finishing 6th, I think that must have been 1997, 1998 or thereabout, was the kickstart, because very soon after that, Damon went on to win in Spa. So it all, the confidence level and the different things and the new technologies that we bolted on new goodies onto the car gave us the confidence. My God, this car seems to be working now. And they went one race after another race after another race. And I believe Silverstone was the kickstart for all of it.